All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Alicia Alex, and I'm the Associate Director in Career and Professional Development at ArtCenter. Welcome to today's panel, Paths to a Freelance Career. I am beyond thrilled to welcome and introduce you all to our panelists today. We have 5 extraordinary ArtCenter alumni who are all working in various creative fields as successful freelancers. But quickly, before we jump into our conversation, just a few housekeeping notes. Since there's quite a few of us in this meeting, just make sure that you are staying on mute so that all of our attention can be to our panelists. And there will be time at the end for questions, but of course, feel free to pop those in the chat as we go, and we'll make sure to get those answered as well. Again, we are recording this session, so everyone here today will get a copy of the recording, and I'll also send some additional freelancing resources that we have at CPD for you as well. All right, well, without further ado, let's get started. And I am so excited to welcome Athena, Sade, Jasmine, John, and Yasara. I would just love to kick us off by having you each introduce yourselves, the type of work you do, maybe what you studied at ArtCenter, what you're doing now. And go ahead and kick us off.
Cool. Hi, everyone. I'm Yasara. I studied photography and imaging at ArtCenter, and I finished in 2017, December. And I am still doing photography. I'm a freelance photographer. And I don't have one focus. I shoot still life, product, food, portrait. And I'm very grateful that I've been able to do all of those things.
Great. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. I'm John Dorsey. I graduated from the environmental design program in 2015, spring, and I kind of fell into experiential marketing. So I basically designed pop-up events in a freelance capacity. And I've also typically been gravitating towards projects that have to do with some sort of IP, either film or TV associated.
Awesome. Thanks so much, John.
Yes. Is it me next?
Yeah, Sade.
Okay, I can't see the sequence. I'm Sade. I studied film way back when, no concept of time, but I was on the cinematography track. And now I'm full-time freelance as a DP, more in the commercial world, but then also making the transition more into like long-term narrative right now.
Thanks, Sade.
I'm guessing I'm next, right? Okay, hi everyone. So nice to finally talk and meet everyone. But my name's Athena. I'm a freelance graphic designer and animator in LA. And yeah, I graduated from ArtCenter pretty recently in 2021 with a BFA in graphics and an emphasis in motion and a minor in social innovation. So that's a lot of where my work is. I primarily work as a brand designer and an animator and motion designer for a lot of the entertainment industry, as well as partake a lot in like our organizations, nonprofits, and volunteer work as well. So nice to meet everyone.
Thanks so much. And Jasmine.
I think I'm last. So I'm Jasmine. Nice to meet everyone. I studied illustration, entertainment arts. It's been so long, I don't even remember. Yeah, illustration, entertainment arts. I left ArtCenter and I've been full-time as a storyboard revisionist at Nickelodeon, but I freelance as well. So I've been storyboard revising and boarding for Nick and other nonprofits and even people in the music industry. So I got dipping my toes everywhere I try. So yeah, that's me.
I love that. I love that. Thanks so much. That seems to be the name of the game. Dip your toes everywhere.
You kind of have to.
For real.
All right. So just to kind of start, how did you all get started in your freelance career? Was it something you planned to do? Was it something that you kind of started doing maybe after you were full-time or kind of working around? What was that? What did that path to freelance look like for you?
For me personally, freelance was always what I was going for. I didn't necessarily want to do in-house. I think with photography specifically, there's so much freedom in freelance. Like every assignment is different and new. And again, me being able to shoot various things and getting emails and calls for various things is just like the dreamiest freelance, I think, situation where I like the change because it's keeping me excited and stimulated. And I mean, obviously, like in-house is an option, but I don't think that would be as stimulating as for me. So my plan was always to finish school and assist, save money because obviously freelance is so unstable. And so save money via assisting and learn what I could. And, you know, a lot of my work has come from being on set, like who I meet, my, you know, on set, like not on set, like who I am, how I'm connecting with people, brings a lot of work. And so the plan was always to do that, assist, and then transition into freelancing full time.
Awesome.
Same, like, I'm just like echoing what Jasmine said earlier. Like, I started freelancing while I was still in term. And because at the end of the day, you got to pay rent, you got to pay tuition while being at ArtCenter. And so a lot of how I started off freelancing was from the internet. Like, I would post my work online. I was on Craigslist doing random videography gigs, but it's like being able to have planted those seeds brought better experiences later down the line. Like a random Craigslist job I had done in film school helped me meet a director who was also a videographer who later hired me on my first union job as a DP. So it all kind of like trickled down. It's about the relationships you build. So I think that was like the biggest takeaway for me being in film school, is like planting those seeds while I was still in term, so that when I made that transition, when I left school, like it was more seamless and I still had like different leads of work. And then also like I was freelancing in my living room. I know a lot of photo term and film kids do this as well, where they would shoot from home, but like I started shooting like actual client work while I was in term as well. And it was like for upcoming brands, like musicians that I really rock with, shooting music videos with like a seamless taken from the prop room and just like my own lighting kit that I had bought off of Amazon. It was really just me being like resourceful while I was in film school, so that when I left school, it was like I was fully prepared to like freelance as a full-time freelance person.
Yeah, that's amazing. Got to use the resources that you have.
Yeah, ArtCenter has all the resources that really build me up for sure.
For me, I kind of dipped in and out of full-time and freelance for a while and found that I really like the flexibility of freelance. It ended up whenever I was in-house at an agency, they tended to take advantage of the people that worked there. And what I love about freelance is you have the ability to say no to a project and to make your own schedule, to take the projects that you're really interested in. And the way that I kind of found my way into it was through recruitment agencies. So there's one called Creative Circle that I was working with quite a bit, and then Syndicate Blue. And they placed me at some of these freelance jobs. And then from there, as you were talking about, Sade, the seeds kind of plant themselves and you meet people along the way, you keep those connections, you connect with them on LinkedIn, and then you continue to have people reach out randomly that you've been recommended from.
Yeah, that's awesome. What I'm hearing is that building that creative community is so important.
It's crucial.
It's everything, especially even when you're crew. I mean, for more film photo, like even if you're just assisting, like that goes such a long way. If you're impressionable on the director or the production company, they'll want to bring you back as well. So it's like, regardless of what title you are on a job, like it's still a matter of like just getting the job done and like being a good person to work with too. Like you'd be surprised, like some of these people know all of the technical side of things, but like they're just not good people and people don't want to come back.
That's
and
so
like
real.
Being a good person really just goes such a long way. I'm sure Yusara could echo that as well, being on like so many still shoots as well.
No, I fully know that when I was assisting, like a huge part of the reason I was getting hired is because I was having fun on set and I would make my photographer feel like stress-free, you know, we're laughing, we're goofing, but we're getting the job done. And I know that directly from like my on-set experience, I have gotten work. Like producers have hired me that I used to be an assistant on their set. So it's totally like, yeah. I mean, I always like, my goal is to like have fun while I'm working. And I mean, I do that. So it works.
It shows them the work.
It works.
Athena and Jasmine, how about you both? What did your path to freelance look like?
Ooh, I can go, Jasmine. That's cool.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I guess it actually really started like around the pandemic, like peak when everyone was like at home, like no one was doing real in-person work or jobs. And I think it taking that off term to really like focus and recalibrate like what I was doing with my work and career. And yeah, I saw the opportunity. I interned previously at like a branding agency in 2019. And then during 2020, they reached out and I was like, you know what? I have time. Like we're at home. I might as well just go for it. And I think that kind of started paving the path of like, oh, this is a tangible thing. Like you kind of do get scrappy with it. Like Sade was saying, like you just kind of make do with what your setup is at home and you're like designing like big projects on just like your tiny like 2016 MacBook. But doing that like really allowed you to see like, oh, you can really have a creative career like in your home base and make it happen as long as you have the team and the community to support you. You could really go far with it. So yeah, just like those little seeds everyone's saying, like you're working with people, you know, the person who reached out is someone I worked with at a previous company, and then like they ended up moving to another company and then they asked for work there, and then you start noticing that, you know, you really start building like a collaborative environment by just being a good person to work with, and yeah, being really sociable and friendly, and that actually is as important as like your work yourself. Yeah.
Kudos to you for being like, I will try this. I will dive in and do that. That's half the battle.
That is true. It is very much so.
Yeah, and literally echoing what everyone else is saying. But yeah, starting off for freelancing for me, it was really just like, oh, I'm in my off term and I feel like I actually have the time to like make the choices of like what I want to do and who I want to work with. So a lot of the first initial things that I started out with was like just letting a lot of my friends know, hey, I'm available to work if you need anything. So like when we talked about like you like letting your community know of like, hey, and usually they don't lead you astray. They're not going to give you like this like janky, I don't know, job and just be like, yeah, sure, go ahead. Like usually these places that I freelanced with and for were like really incredible, and I've still kept those relationships too. And I think that's like why I'm like still continuing to freelance, just because I love working with these people. So yeah, it like even as like a full-time person, if they email me and like they're like, oh, we need some help, are you available? I'm like, yes, I got you. So yeah, just keeping those relationships and just like yeah, asking your community really did help me start out my freelancing.
Yeah, you made such a good point about both, you know, finding new opportunities through your community, but also like growing your community through these opportunities, and how just, you know, it allows you to meet new people and kind of add people to your community in that way. And I think that's really great. That's such a good perspective. Awesome. One of the things I heard in all of this was flexibility, fun. What does your day-to-day typically look like as a freelancer? I know it's not always fun, but what does that look like? Is there such thing as a typical day-to-day? What is, you know, I know it probably differs depending on projects you're working on, but like, what does your work life look like?
I do not have a typical work day at all. Every single day is different. It depends, obviously, like if I'm having a shoot, the day is focused on the shoot. If I'm not shooting and last week I had 3 shoots, but 4 days of work, and I had 1 day of prep in between. And that was a lot to balance, because you're just trying to juggle everything and make sure that you have enough time for everything. But if I have a down day, usually it's just like addressing my to-do list and getting as much done as I can. Obviously, certain things will take priority based on assignments or work coming up. But no schedule, probably should figure out something that makes it feel a little bit more organized. But every day is truly different. Every day is different for me personally.
I hear that a lot.
Yeah, a lot of my day-to-day is like literally right where I'm at right now. Like a lot of what I do is prep and like figuring out everything in prep. And so even though I don't go like a traditional 9 to 5, like I'll still wake up 9 a.m., like have calls like with either production company director, whatever, my keys within my departments. But it's really just like a lot of like office hours and like setting rules for myself, which is fun, but also dangerous at the same time, because you're literally dictating your own schedule. And if you wanted to, you could just, I don't know, stare at the wall all day or whatnot. But that was something that I really had to learn, like entering freelance is like still being able to like stay productive even when I'm not working as well. Like even if I'm not on a job, I'm doing maintenance on my website. I'm like following up with like directors or production companies to outreach for work or stuff like that. And I think that's a big part of like freelance life is like, even when you're not on a physical job, there's so much maintenance that goes into like branding yourself and being consistent and making sure that you're able to be in a place where you can manifest new and like consistent work essentially. But yeah, but being on set is probably the best part for me.
Yeah, I'll echo that. It's not a typical day every day, but for me, it's like an all or nothing. So if I'm on a project, typically I'm working with an agency, and so I'm kind of like brought into their work life for that period of time, whether it be 3 months or a pitch, whatever. So then I'm kind of based on their schedule, dealing with people on Slack and sitting here at this desk and working more typical office hours. And then other days I'm going to a load in. So we're building out the space. Those like being on set is the most fun for sure. And then there's times when I'm not on the project and then I have no schedule whatsoever and doing the maintenance, updating my website, working on my own stuff, just trying to stay healthy and balanced.
That's great.
Yeah, and for my day-to-day, I still am full-time storyboard visionist. So I do my freelance on my off hours. And I'm kind of freelancing like not too much. It's like every other month at least. Or if I'm like, I'll gladly like take on something if I'm really interested. But other than that, when I'm doing freelance, yeah, it's actually really similar to my full time. It's just you get calls from your director or emails, and it's like, oh, here's what we want you to do. And like as Sade said, when like setting up rules for yourself, like they kind of just like expect you to do something like they have a deadline for you, really. So at least for storyboarding and revisions, and they kind of say, these are the parameters you have, this is what we're looking for, can you please do it? And then you do it and you send it in whatever time frame they have. So yeah, it's really setting up that timeline for yourself and kind of managing your time as you go to get that deadline hit. But that's what my day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, it's really good to hear the perspective too of when you're working full-time and freelancing on the side. I think sometimes that's how a lot of people start out freelancing too. And so it's always really good to kind of hear your process there.
Yeah, what I love about like what you can choose as freelancing is like you can choose your own like typical work day. So that flexibility is really up to you. Just like choosing which gigs you want to take on. Every agency, every studio functions completely differently. And that is definitely a challenge like on the job. But if you find those studios that you really are compatible with and you have like the same timeline and the same way workflow, you can really find that like symbiotic relationship. So yeah, from my experience, like I've noticed I work really well with like branding agencies or like graphic agencies because like they just give me the project brief and then I can basically choose when I want to work on it. They'll just give me the date that it's due and it's like, okay, I can work on this on the night, I can work on this on the day. And that gives me the ability to like add other events in my schedule. Versus like if I work at a motion design agency, they work more typically like a 9-to-5 job. So they'll book me out for like longer periods, like 2 weeks to like couple months. And then that's kind of more of like a typical full-time job, but I'm a freelancer or a contractor. So yeah, it just really depends like on the gigs you take on and yeah, what's compatible with you.
Yeah, that's great. And you know, I'm hearing a lot of structures for yourself, figuring out processes. You're obviously needing to figure out other people's processes, like the clients you're working with and kind of some of those parameters as well. And I guess with that, my question is, what's the number one skill set you think freelancers need to be set up for success, like a personal skill set? Sorry, this question was a new one I slipped in there.
I think that, I mean, I still
it.
think that this would like, at least my response kind of leads into what we were just going to talk about and what also the next question from our list would be. But like for me personally, it's like the ability to hold myself accountable. I think that like I liked school because of structure and order, and freelance is, for me personally, not that. So I have to work really hard to give that to myself, and make sure that I'm on top of my stuff. Whenever it's an actual assignment and a client, I'm of course on top of it, but like my website, I have been very slowly been working on that, but I haven't updated that in over a year. That's a sin, that's so bad. But there's so much stuff like that, where I think it's so important that we have to be aware that we are holding ourselves accountable, because we are our own bosses, like we're in charge. And so if we're not doing that, we're failing ourselves, or at least that's how I feel.
Yeah, for me, I would say it's setting boundaries. In the beginning of my freelance career, I just said yes all the time and overworked myself, and I didn't realize that nobody else was going to look out for me. So I had to learn early on that you have to say no sometimes, or say like, no, I can't do that tonight. I need to do it in the morning, and figure out how best to still get the work done, still have a good working relationship, but still be able to take care of yourself.
Absolutely. I always tell students those are called responsible no's. Like you are
right.
standing up.
My biggest one is like, don't call me after 6 p.m. I'm so
For real.
that, because people will try to, I don't know, nag for work like after work hours, and it's just like not respectful of their own time, but also your time, But I think for me it would be, I guess, being resourceful. Like I said, my whole story about like shooting in my living room when I was still in film school, like that really helped push my career. But even as I'm like working on actual like commercial sets, like production companies and directors really lean on their DP to, I guess what they like to call is like make their day, and that's balancing budget, it's balancing crew needs and also like creative needs from the director and versus client. So you're literally like balancing all the politics on your shoulders. And so being able to come up with effective solutions on the fly is a really big thing. And like being resourceful with what you've been given is a really big thing as well.
Yeah, so important. Anyone else?
Oh, I'd say mine is it's time management, as like a lot of people say that, but I think it is true to a sense. But yeah, it's also just being really realistic with yourself in the time that you do have. Like don't overwork yourself or take on too much, as like John said. Just really know your limit and your bandwidth in terms of like how much you can like commit to something. And yeah, just maybe it's being realistic, but yeah, in terms of just like being realistic with time is really important, I think, when you're freelancing, because yeah, you do want a good job, do a good job. So I'd say that's my answer.
Absolutely, it's a good one.
Wait, could you ask the question again? I just want to.
It's okay. I threw a curveball in there. What is the number one skill set you think freelancers need to be successful, or to set themselves up for success?
I'll add this one because you mentioned it like earlier, but I do think it's pretty important. But like just being a like kind person, you'll find that like a lot of times like freelancing can be very casual gigs. Like it'll be a friend asking you for a logo, or it could be, another company asking for like a social post. And, they want to just find people that are pretty easy to work with and friendly and can like get the job done. Yeah, it's like not as intense as like a lot of like career paths make you think like, oh, you have to go in a formal interview and you have to wear a suit and tie. Or like, no, you're just like helping out a friend, like do a favor. That's kind of the vibe of like, at least what I've experienced like freelancing. And you also like never know where like any of these people will go. Like they might go to another company and then they'll keep reaching out for you for work there, or like, they might suggest you to another friend. So it's really just like being a amiable person to work with, and letting yourself be known that like you're a good asset to the team, and they really appreciate people like that. And we remember that. Yeah.
I think that's so important that you brought that back around, because I do think it's like your personal reputation is part of your brand, right? It's part of, people want to be able to work with you. And I used to work before ArtCenter in a position where I was hiring a lot of freelancers, and I used to talk to other people that worked in my industry about like, did you work with this freelancer before? What was your experience? And like people talk to each other. So I do think that's so important. Thank you for bringing that back.
The design world is small.
Film world too, man. People will know your
Small. It's like the art center community is small, they're everywhere. And then like the design and art communities are small, and the film. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And so kind of in that same realm, I guess, in terms of specifically business skill sets, like, because so much of freelancing is you're kind of running your own business, your personal business, or maybe you are under an LLC or something like that. But essentially, what are the most important business skill sets that you have in your toolkit and that you think freelancers should have in theirs? And what are your go-to resources?
I would
I
say,
feel like, sorry, I feel like client relation is like really important. Kind of like just pretty much what Athena was just saying, making sure that you are communicating clearly and you're making sure that everybody is like on the same page and all of that stuff. I'm trying to think of like what else specifically, like what a go-to resource would be for stills. If anybody else wants to pop in, you can pop in, I'll come back.
I was going to say time tracking. That was something that kind of got me in trouble.
Same.
Just like not realizing that I had to be very deliberate about it. I just use Google Calendar and just like put in all the hours that I'm working. And when I start, I just make a Google Calendar little event and then continue to track it. But when you're on a bunch of projects all at the same time, it can get confusing if you're not on top of it. And on top of that as well is just then getting into a good groove with invoicing. And sometimes, depends on the company, you have to get really good about following up and not feeling bad about being like, hey, I sent you this invoice 2 weeks ago. What's the status? So those more like clerical items.
Yeah, those are so important. Those are sometimes the last things we think about, you know. That's some of the most important. You got to get paid.
Yeah. I would say for me, thankfully, like a lot of what I do is based on the creative. So for me, what I wish I knew earlier while I was in film school was like the importance of crafting like your creative deck and like using material. Like I use Canva a lot to create my like cinematography decks. Shot Deck is a really great resource for like finding film references, lighting references. I use this thing called Kive.ai, which is really sick. And you could literally, it's basically an image database. You can upload like stills that you really connect with onto a platform and then like be able to recycle them as you're working on different decks. But you can also like drop like a YouTube link in it and it'll pull stills from the YouTube link, which has been really helpful for me mood boarding because like Shot Deck only has so much and Pinterest only has so much. So I think just like training that creative eye and being able to communicate like your creative vision as well. Like a big part of getting the job is one, putting time and effort into creating the deck, but also being able to sell it in a director's meeting or a production company's meeting is a big thing. And then just back to maintenance, like, yeah, maintenance of the website. Like I use Fabric, it's like Fabrik. I don't know if y'all are familiar, but that really helps me because I don't have time between sets to like do HTML coding. I wish I could do what some of y'all do, but I can't. So it's a really good seamless platform to just like create project files so that you can like constantly be updating your website. I don't negotiate my own deals anymore, but when I was starting to freelance, I was like having to make those boundaries. Like I'm going to cap at this certain rate, being on top of invoicing and being able to communicate your boundaries in terms of like payment terms as well. Contracts are such a big thing. And thankfully, like, I know the film department at ArtCenter, they're really big on contracts early on. And it's like, it seems rigorous, but really like being consistent within that really protects you as an artist and protects your like creative IP, which is only gonna keep getting harder and harder, like as you start freelancing.
Yeah, that's 100% true. Anyone else? Business skills, go-to business resources or skills?
I have used, I think time tracking was definitely like a big thing just because you have to understand like how much time it takes for you to like do some of these tasks. And you obviously don't want to like exert yourself or like push over some boundaries that you may have not set. So yeah, time tracking software. I've used like Harvest before, which is like just like a virtual time tracker, and you could literally like put the project you're on and like press start and then press end just to see how long it takes you to do some things. I've also like used Notion before, which is like pretty good for just tracking like my overall like projects and goals that I'm working towards. Google Sheets is awesome, just like plugging in all the numbers you have. Like something I recently did because I had to figure out taxes this year, which was slightly hell, but basically, yeah, it was wild. It was like I had to just track like how much I was making at each of these gigs and like just see like how long it took, how long did it take for the client to get back. And it's really just that management. Like you don't really think of that, like you practice in school, like the creative skill set, but when you actually comes, like you are managing yourself as a creative and as a business. So it's just keeping track of like how much energy you're putting in, how much labor you're putting in, how much money you're making so that you can pay rent and bills, and just really being diligent in that skill. And it's not easy. That's why I'm suggesting all these software, because it's like you got the tools on your hand, you might as well make use of it.
Yeah,
So.
and that's admin time you're not getting paid for, you know, it's
True.
it's good to track that and to understand how much time you're spending on it and to kind of streamline, you know.
Yeah, and for me, it would probably be like making those new relationships and being open to do like the cold open, or like the cold emails. I think that's what it's called. Just like reaching out to people that you're interested in or wanting to know, and who you want to work with as well. I utilize LinkedIn a lot. And I usually talk to a lot of like hiring managers in different studios and companies. And it's nice to know too that their job literally is to like hire people. So they're honestly looking for people that are coming towards them, you know what I mean? Like that their job is to search for people. So you kind of like help them in a way by sending in that cold email and just letting them know like, hey, I'm interested in working. And I think that helps, or even just like talking to them too, not just like working, like interested in getting to know them and meeting them, has helped a lot for both freelance and full-time as well. And yeah, just really talking to people and not being afraid to like set up like, oh, want to have like a little coffee Zoom meeting and like get to know each other because I'm interested in what you do and like how, you know, how the studio is and how you like your work. So yeah, just kind of opening those doors yourself can always help a lot when it comes, especially when it comes to freelance. Because yeah, I remember in the beginning, not a lot of things were coming my way. I had to actively like search for it and be an active participant and like trying to make those connections that I wanted. And yeah, it led me to a lot of like really cool people that I still talk to now. So it's been awesome. But yeah, I'd say that has helped me a lot.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, just saying that's a good one. It's like, especially even just like showing up to events like this, like in-person panels or like networking events. There's a lot of filmmaker networking events. Like that's how you meet directors. That's how you meet production companies. Like even if you're a DP, like it's good to reach out to DPs and like learn their own personal experiences as well. Like I think mentorship is a really big thing as well. Like I'd love to hear from y'all about like how your experience has been with mentorship and how it's pushed your career and helped you in your own way.
Mentorship was massive for me. I was going to mention that one of our questions coming up was, if you don't mind, I guess maybe I'm gonna skip over really quick.
Yeah,
How important is building
get
a
right in.
community. Mentorship was a massive part of that for me. Creative community is everything to me. And also like POC creative community is everything to me. I didn't have that up until like 2020, I want to say. And I didn't really realize that I was missing it so much. But during like fall of 2020, I was one of the mentees in Apostrophe Rep's first ever round of their mentorship program that they do. I think that they're about to start their fourth. But it was through that I was able to meet some now very, very close friends. And also that mentorship program was great because there was a lot of accountability. It was happening to me at a time where I was planning on transitioning out of assisting at the beginning of that year, obviously COVID, and then me being very, very stressed about money and just kind of diving back into assisting as much as I could. And I hadn't really felt inspired to do any of my own work in a while either. And that mentorship program specifically got me really excited about photography again, and gave us the opportunity to like pitch a project that we were interested in and, you know, see it to the end. And they organized speed dating for us. You know, I was able to have one-on-one relationships with photographers off their roster as well as agents. And I still have a relationship with those people. And it, you know, introduced me to a lot of photographers that I didn't know of. And a handful of them live in Los Angeles. I'm still close with those people. I've become friends with people who are in the other rounds of the second round of mentorship. I think is kind of the only one that I really got to meet some people in. But again, that community is everything because I can text any one of them and be like, someone's coming at me with this, right? Like, should I fight? Should I push more on this? Like, I know you did this job, like, blah, like, how was that? A friend just texted me a little while ago about an editor that I had an experience with. And so she wanted to hear how I dealt with it. And I even like, here's what I did. I would do this instead, all of that stuff. So creative community is absolutely everything for me. And I'm very grateful to that mentorship program because I wouldn't have had this experience without it. And there are a lot of different mentorship programs kind of happening. You just have to, unfortunately, keep an eye out. Like I saw it on social. I don't know that Giant's doing one again, but Giant did a mentorship program. East did a mentorship program. Google did a thing. Google did their first round of this grant, a diversity and inclusion equity grant sort of thing. And so, yeah, I think social media is where I was seeing this. For Apostrophe specifically, like a photographer I knew who was on their roster posted about it, and I saved it, fully forgot about it. And 4 days before, one of my friends who I had only met on set a couple of times at that point, like I did not know her very well at all, but she was applying and she was like, hey, I'm applying for this thing. I think you'd be a really good fit. You should apply too. And that was like 4 days before it was due, applied and, you know, got in, and the rest is history. So I think that mentorship is major.
I could not agree more. We also run a mentorship program in CPD, not to plug that, but it's a great program. It's coming up this summer, applications open, but I agree mentorship is so important. The Apostrophe mentorship program is incredible. But those outside of photo, check out the CPD mentorship program as well.
Yeah, for me, my first industry like setting was through a mentorship. I was accepted into the Nick artist program, and I've been with Nick ever since. So that's where my full-time kind of started. But mentorships really was the spark to really understand animation in general. It also widened my like community immensely. Like everyone in the Nick artist program really does know each other. We kind of have like group chats and like still talk with each other and stuff. So yeah, as Yasara was saying, like helping each other out, like having that mentorship really did make you meet other people that were also on your like individual peer level. Sometimes when you start out, you kind of aim for like, oh, I want to talk to the directors, I want to talk to like these big hotshot names. But yeah, finding people who are like in your like peer mentorship kind of level, they're like the friends that will like help push you up in a way. It's really cool if you're able to do a mentorship, because not only are you like learning more about studios and learning more about animation, at least if you're in like or like any animation mentorship program, usually you get like paired in and understand how productions work, and that has helped so much for like freelancing as well. Now that I have a wider understanding of like the pipeline in general, I've even done like design work, even though I'm like a storyboard artist, just because I understand like the pipeline of animation and how everything kind of correlates together. And yeah, mentorships are really cool, and you make really close bonds with people. So I that's kind of my biggest advice as well. Like if you have a chance to aim for mentorship and just have a relationship as well with like any director or someone who's teaching you in whatever field you're going to, they will help immensely. And yeah.
Yeah, I love that. I think definitely I'm hearing so much of the importance of growing your creative community. And I think that's so great for every piece of freelancing, just both in the finding clients, like getting peer support, understanding kind of what you're doing and what the industry is doing, and kind of staying up to date in that. We have a couple of questions left, and I want to leave time for questions from our guests or from our attendees. So just a couple more questions. What are some of the things that students can start doing now to prep for a freelance career? As maybe there's some folks in the room who are kind of thinking about maybe getting into freelance, aren't sure, kind of want to start prepping for that as they get towards graduation. What are your thoughts on how they can start prepping?
I think
go ahead, Sarah.
I'll be brief. I think for photography, like maintaining and sharing personal work is really important. And so whether that be spec stuff, like I think that as long as you are making the work that you want to be making in the future and sharing that and letting it be seen, I think that's a really great way to at least prepare for freelancing.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Yeah, I was gonna add, like, this kind of goes with the last question about community, but like a lot of people don't even realize, like, the first time you enter school and you attend your first class, like you're already like networking and connecting with like people you're potentially going to work with in the future. So it's really just like upholding those connections and not necessarily viewing them as like, oh, this person's going to get me a job, but like, oh, how can I help this person out? And just like asking if they have work that you might could jump on, or if what else, just like supporting other people in their events and their initiatives that they're doing, because in turn when you're looking for work, they're going to come and support you, and that's how you can really build a strong connection, like within school, like going to clubs, going to events, and then eventually like asking each other for like recs at like previous intern jobs they've done, or like connecting and doing portfolio building together. Like all of those things really do add up to like your professional career and actually working in the real world, because you're going to be doing the same thing but like on a macro scale.
I would say something that could be helpful is building your LinkedIn. Like Jasmine was saying, a lot of my jobs have come through my LinkedIn profile, from connecting with hiring managers or with companies, different people that work at the companies that you like or that you might want to work at, connecting with random people that way and starting to develop that network, because people randomly reach out on LinkedIn all the time and it can lead to great jobs in a lot of cases.
Yeah, that's a really great one. I think sometimes we forget there's artists and designers on LinkedIn, but there are folks looking for artists and designers on LinkedIn to hire. Absolutely.
I would say like focus on, like while you're in school, like focus on finding your voice, like finding the stories you want to tell, like what makes your work stand out as a director, as a DP, whatever. Because I think if I could go back, I would have been like using the resources from ArtCenter to like curate my portfolio earlier, you know, like a lot of building my portfolio came like after school, and it was like figuring out as I was going. And I think like what was the most beneficial for me as a cinematographer in school was like Afonso's class, and we would be cutting our reels and he'd be giving us critiques of like what kind of imagery did he connect to the most, and like being able to have that like peer-to-peer like review process is so big, because you're literally finding your community within school, but then also like helping like tune your eye for the future essentially. And I would say like your website too is like everything, building that reel, building that portfolio, so that like when you fully enter the freelance world, you have like something to speak for your identity as an artist.
Yeah, that's so.
Oh, sorry. Oh yeah, just echoing off of that as well. I would say, yeah, I think trying to understand who you are outside of like ArtCenter as well, because I know that it can get really like it's a lot when you see so many different voices, even on like social media and like IG and stuff. There's like so many things you can take from, but what is like that thing, that story that you have, that that spark, you know, and usually that's what hiring managers, I've noticed, are really like wanting to see from what I've seen, even like talking to the hiring team on Nick. A lot of them just want to see people's voices, and they're interested to know like where they are now. They know that you don't have to be perfect, but if you have something there that can lead to something like amazing, they want to utilize that, especially entry level people. They're not expecting like the most perfect anatomy or whatever, these really rendered animation. They want to see like a certain voice. And if you're like an awesome person to work with and you're open to learning and you show that, that will help you a lot. So really finding that within your time in ArtCenter, like what can you craft that like makes your heart sing, that, you know, that, and people really do see that through your art, and it takes you a long way when you really keep honing in and trying to figure that out, because it is like a lifelong process to figure out like what your voice is, you know, and it's always constantly changing. So just being curious about like the art that like matters to you and why it does, and just keep keep going towards that, like it will take you many places. Yeah.
That's amazing. Anyone else? Awesome. All right, well, I do want to give us time for some students and alumni to answer questions, but before that, just any last advice? I know we just doled out some advice, but any last advice to students or recent alum who are looking to freelance? If you put yourself back before you started freelancing, if someone could give you some advice, what do you wish it was?
Make sure you enjoy life too.
Yeah, I was gonna say like have fun.
Yeah.
I think I can be hard on myself very easily. And recently, a lot of people in my life have kind of told me that I need to relax. So maybe you guys should also relax and not be so hard on yourself too.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's true. Even in film, like you got to live life to make films. You know, I say this all the time, like that's our biggest inspiration. And like, I think social media can be a blessing and a curse, because it can like put you in rooms you'll never expect to be in, but also like you're exposed to so many different kinds of art and different people in different parts of their careers, and you can't really let that affect you. You got to really focus in on your own journey as an artist and like what you care about and like what you have to say and like what your own personal long-term goals are. Like everyone's journey is different, especially within film. Like as soon as you throw out the whole competition mentality, like there can only be one of us mentality out the door, like your life is like way bigger and way much more expansive, and like you're truly able to like just challenge yourself as an artist, you know.
Mine would be to just breathe, you know. Just breathe. If things get hard, just trust in the timing. I think, you know, things happen for a reason, things come and go for a reason, and like there's timing is everything, I think. And just trusting in that, you know, never like being so hard on yourself, I think, and like imposter syndrome, the things like will not help you at the end of the day. It's just like really advocating for yourself and just like trusting in yourself and in the process of your journey. So that's the advice I would give.
I love it.
And also be smart with your money. Like freelance life, you could have a really good month and then the next month, crickets. So like, I think that was the biggest like piece of advice I got from like one of my mentors. She said like live below your means, and I think that really helped me as I like went further in my career, because it's like regardless of what kind of work you've done in the past, you never know how the future is going to go. So like being able to like process like sustainability as you're growing within your career is really important as well. Them savings.
Yeah, one of my mentors said at least have 3 months of rent in your savings account. And like keep that there. So that's a good like number to aim for.
Yeah, I do the same thing. And also there's also like no shame in like having a 9-to-5 too, you know, like going full-time freelance is such a big step as an artist. And like I don't know, like there's all this like shame towards working a 9 to 5. If you are working in-house for a company, there's like no shame in that, because like you're creating connections. You guys were talking about that earlier, like planting seeds with other directors, producers, whatnot. For when you go full-time freelance, then you're supportive. Like, don't feel like, I just want to stress, like students should not feel like they have to freelance right away after graduating, because it is a journey and you have to like fully be ready. You don't want to put yourself in a position to potentially have to like move back home. I know like I almost was at risk for that when I was freelancing. Like I almost had to move back home, and that was like such a big fear of mine. So it's just like, be practical with your journey, and like it'll all make sense after.
Yeah, that's really great advice. Anyone else? All right, let's open it up for questions. If you all don't mind staying just a little longer so we can get some student questions in. I could ask a million more questions. We might have to do a part 2 of this maybe. But do any students or alum in the room have questions for our amazing panelists? Feel free to put them in the chat. You can also unmute yourself. I see a few.
I do have several questions, but I don't know if you guys want to answer the chat questions first.
Let's see, I see one from you in the chat. Can we connect with you all on LinkedIn?
Yes.
Awesome.
Yes.
And I can send out your LinkedIn's after also in the resources, so you don't have to pop those in right now, but I'll do that as well. And then Kaylin, if you want to ask your question out loud, you can.
Oh, no, I said I have like several, and that's why I was like, I don't know if you want to answer the chat ones first.
No, go ahead, you're already speaking.
Yeah, go
All
for
right.
it.
So this is kind of a question for Jasmine, sorry, because I'm kind of interested in the same disciplines. Like I'm also in illustration, but my interests are in storyboarding. So I'm having trouble, I guess, getting accepted or hired for storyboard internships or story related internships. Like a fear that I have was wondering, do you have to have at least one studio internship under your belt before trying to apply for like a full-time position at a studio? Because right now I'm too nervous to apply directly for, like, let's say just DreamWorks, too nervous to apply for DreamWorks to be a story artist because I don't have any like professional experience in the field. So yeah, that's my question, or first question, I mean.
Yeah, I'd say that even I know so many people have done the PA to storyboard artist route, or like PA to storyboard revisionist. You don't necessarily need to have like an art job background to get into like becoming a story artist. And usually you learn a lot when you're just in the studio. So even if it's like a PA or a PC, production assistant and coordinator job, that it helps so much just because you're like planting the seeds and building those relationships with people, and also learning and seeing how a studio is run and what is needed for these types of roles. Another thing that also helped was taking like outside classes like Brainstorm or CDA. There's a lot of mentorships there. And in those classes, you're really meeting people who aim specifically to be storyboard artists, which is a lot different in the illustration entertainment program, because there's people doing design, they're interested in concept, but this is more like catered to the specific thing that you want to do. So if you just meet more people who are doing storyboard and like also meeting storyboard directors, that will help a lot and skyrocket you to wherever you want to go. So yeah, I hope that helps.
No, that helps a lot. I've heard some people recommend Brainstorm as well. This is another question for you. Sorry. So what like sites or like, I guess like template site websites do you recommend for like an illustration storyboard portfolio website? Like, do you just have a separate website for each discipline because those are so different from one another, or do you just have like one portfolio website with like both boards and illustrations?
Oh yeah, I just have one whole website and different tabs of like boards and illustrations and design work. So that's what I have, and usually it gets the idea across. They know like where to go. So as long as it's under your name, they know that it's from you, and that'll be helpful.
Okay, thank you very much. And this is my last question, and like this is for kind of everybody. I was wondering how important is it to grow a following on social media? Because it's easy for me to get pretty discouraged from trying to like not necessarily get hired through social media, but just discouraged for me to like attempt to network through social media because every time I post a drawing, I get like 20 likes.
Fortunately or unfortunately, I get a lot of my work from social media and I go crazy and I can't handle like looking at likes and comparing myself to others. So I just I post something and I immediately hide my like count and I don't go back and look at I will look at my business insights and the engagement just to see like if people are saving it, if they're sending it, like it's interesting to see what people are drawn to. But as far as like likes go, I just like really have to tell myself that I can't spend time on that because I'm just going to feel bad about myself. Because I'm just going to look at my friends and other peers and like, if I'm comparing myself to somebody else, it's not helping anybody. So I do get a lot of work through Instagram. But I just turn the little hide like count and just keep moving.
Same here. Like a lot of my work comes from social media, but I think it's because of like, I really got just like so drained with the whole cold email route. Because then that's like extensive communication. Whereas like social media, you can be like, oh, here's me, do what you will. And people will come to you for projects. And so like, but it can also be a thing like your Sarah said, like right now, my Instagram, it's not really as personal as it used to be. I just kind of post work when it comes out and then I close the app as well. And I really feel like it's just like a hub to like get your work in rooms that traditionally it could not have been in, you know? So like, it's more about perspective. Like, don't feel like you have to conform to a certain algorithm or post certain things, just post what you like and the art that really like exemplifies you and you can just close that.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Those were all very insightful. I didn't even know you could hide likes on Instagram, but maybe I should do that for like my own mental health sake.
No, truly, it's
should.
the 3-dot corner, I think. I think there's like an edit posting and you can just immediately hide your likes.
Pro
Okay.
That's great.
I've been doing that for like the last like couple of years. It is.
Yeah, I've done it since the moment it became a feature.
Yeah. You're like, excellent. All right, we have a couple other questions in the chat if y'all don't mind sticking around. This question I get a lot about pricing your work. Any advice on how to price your work, or maybe just some insight into how you first went about doing that? I know it differs depending on the industry you're in, but just some insight into that.
I mean, I think this is where the community comes in really handy. Having your peers that are also freelancing at the same time, like it's been very helpful. I have a friend, some close friends from ArtCenter that I still talk to and keep in touch with, and we just kind of compare notes and have been continually growing as the years go on. In the beginning, it's kind of like you got to shoot and see if it lands. I would say try to go higher than you think that you actually deserve, because they can always come back with a counter offer. Because in the beginning, I think that you can get into your head very easily and think that you're not worth as much as you actually are because you don't have that much time in the industry, but you're still valid and you still have a lot to offer. So just shoot for the stars and then you can always come back.
Yeah, I'd say if you're already talking about pricing with someone, that means they want you to be on board. So if that means they're going to pay you higher just to have you on board, then you should aim higher most of the time. And if, yeah, logistics happen, it's okay to just knock a few things down. So for me, generally, I check on the union. For storyboard work, I check with the union rates and I match that. But yeah, that's what I do. So there's if you're interested in anything animation and freelancing, check the union rates that they have, because it's all public information and you'll see what studios, how much they price things, how much artists should be being paid. So yeah, definitely check that out.
That's a great resource. I'm going to add that to our resources.
Yeah.
Yes, and also like account for like materials used, you know, like as DPs, like it's camera gear, it's lighting, and like putting that into your own personal rate sometimes, especially when you're first starting out. It's like you want to still be able to feel like you can pay back the gear that you've invested in or borrowed XYZ. Like that's a big part of it too. Like, and it's important, even if people push back on your rate, you need to communicate, oh, this is going towards a rental on da 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 da, and communicating like how the money is being used as well, especially when you're starting out. I think as you grow, you don't gotta do all that, but like it's just establishing boundaries and like setting a fixed rate when you're first starting out is so important. Like even when I was just negotiating my own deals, I was like, I'm gonna cap at this rate, and people would know not to hit me up until they was ready to pay this rate. And it also raises a standard for like other artists as well, like yourself, to like all come up together and like eventually shift the industry, if anything.
Yeah, I think what Shade said was like pretty accurate. Like you basically have to accommodate for everything, like your expenses, if you need like a digital setup or like programs, like that all comes out of like your rate, right? So like tallying up how much you're spending on those expenses, as well as just like your everyday living expenses, like, you know, budget for food, housing, rent, like extra entertainment. Like there are a lot of things that you realize that you kind of need to like do your job, right? So accommodating for that. And something I've done is like in the past is just like tally up like, okay, how much do I actually like need this month to survive? And how does that translate to like an hourly rate or a daily rate? I've also like historically like used this like salary guide, so you can kind of gauge like in your industry, and I could said it, but like you can kind of gauge in your industry like how much is like the standard for like a junior designer or designer, and gauge that on like the project they're asking. A key thing to know is that anything that's like a big corporate conglomerate, like I don't know, Apple, Google, like YouTube, like you could probably charge them much higher than like if it was a small business. So just understanding who your client is, understanding their budget, and then really just deciding like how much do you want to work with them, you know, and gauging your rate based on that.
Also, if the time frame that they're asking for is a little like shorter, ask for more. That's a good thing. If they're
Yeah.
Sorry, finish your thought.
Yeah, there's like a sweet spot where it's like you get their highest budget number that they're willing to hit, and like you just want to like hit right above it so they can negotiate down if they need.
Oh, I was just gonna say there's also like, I don't know, different reasons for doing different jobs, you know, like a job could be under your usual rate, but it's really going to help get your portfolio to where it needs to be. And so like that's a really big thing when you're figuring out freelancing too, is like I worked for like half my rate on a music video that helps me get in with a bigger artist eventually later down the line. It's like long-term investments. Or if you really like, for me, like with my agency, like they're really big on like, if you really love the creative, we'll make it work. And I think that's a big thing too, because it's like ultimately it comes down to portfolio and like finding your voice, like we were talking about earlier. Like don't let money be the reason that the thing that holds you back from like opportunity as well. I think it's like, yes, we got to pay rent, but also yes, we got to be able to like invest in the longevity of like our creative careers as well.
That's such a good point, just looking at things holistically.
And it could be a balance too. Like I'll do a job, like as how I plan out my months, like I'll do a job to pay rent, but then I'll take like 2 jobs that really will help push my portfolio where it needs to be. It's like you get like what the joy in freelancing is, like you get to dictate how that works and you get to set that standard for yourself. But like it is important to have like an understanding of both for sure.
True.
The other thing too that Jasmine reminded me of is if you are someone that's doing work that traditionally gets licensed, if you want to consider those rights also, because there's kind of a tier in terms of how much you should be charging based on licensing fees. And then also to Athena's point, when you are working for larger companies, you also want to, you know, keep in mind that they're not paying you benefits, they're not paying healthcare, they're not paying that. So you can actually like add 20 to 30% to your rate because they're saving money by not having you in-house technically. So think about that a little bit too.
I need health insurance.
Yeah. Okay. Are places like Upwork a good place to start? How did you get over that fear of taking the first step? I think, John, you mentioned working with not Upwork, but Creative Circle.
Creative Circle and Syndicate Blue. I don't know if they're still around, but those were 2 agencies that offer these types of design jobs, and they can get you in the door for a lot of these agencies.
That's great.
What's Upwork? Is it an agency?
Upwork is for freelancers. It's like a platform that you can can like say what you're looking for, and you can like, there will be projects and jobs, and then they'll take a percentage. I don't have any personal experience. I did a separate project with them to promote something, but I haven't looked into it for my means at all. But I don't think that there's any harm in trying. I have a friend in the music industry who's using it right now, and she's really enjoying it, but I don't see anything wrong with it. And I feel like getting over the fear of taking the first step, I think you get to a point where you just have to do it. I think you'll get to a point where you're like, I have no other option. I have to move forward. And I'm sure there are other ways of getting over that fear, but I think maybe that's like a last resort, is like, you'll just get to a point where there's no other option. And that's really what you want to do, is make that step.
That's great. All right. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna add, like, I think like what helped me was like having a buddy, like either like internally, like in the company you're working for, or like having like a friend that's like a freelancer and has historically like had to do the same things you're going through. And then like, I promise you, like if they're close enough with you, they're totally willing to help you with everything you have questions for. So it's just being like adamant and being like, how do I price myself? How long should I work on this? Like, don't be afraid to ask questions, because more than likely everyone is going to want to help you out. And yeah, it's just taking that initiative, being like, you know, this person's going to help me. I have the support system. Like, I'm going to make this happen. And that confidence is key, really.
So, yeah, that's really great. All right, we have two last questions. Thank you so much for everyone for hanging on here. I just want to make sure we get to these. How do you ask to initiate a mentorship relationship?
Just ask. I need help. I feel like it's better to just be direct with your ask, you know, like upcoming DPs will reach out to me and be like, hey, Sade, like, I really loved this project you did. Like, how did you do? What was your lighting approach here? Like, DPs are very technical. They love to just nerd out on shit. So like, I think it's better to just ask and like ask for forgiveness later, you know, like be upfront with the ask. If you're trying to get on set, like ask if there's any shadowing opportunities, because sometimes there are spaces where a DP will last minute have a job that they can bring you on. So I think it's just like being upfront. And like, I think a big thing for me is like showing up to things. I do a lot of like just like workshops facilitating education around cinematography as well, especially for women of color. And so like seeing people consistently show up, I'm like, oh, they're really interested in doing this. They're being consistent with like their time. And that makes me want to eventually like bring them on set as a second or as a camera PA. And that's eventually like how you build up within crew.
Yeah, that's
really, I think also like not acknowledging that someone might not get back to you, but not letting that stop you from asking in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the worst thing they can say is no. And
Right.
then it's like, cool.
Then you move on to the next, you find somebody else you're interested in.
Yeah, you get a lot of no's in this lifetime. It's about that self-talk.
That's a good freelancer strength, like resiliency to the no's.
Like someone was talking about imposter syndrome earlier. I think that's like a big thing you have to overcome as a freelancer. Like someone was asking about getting past that first step. You just have to be comfortable. You have to like find comfortability in facing the uncomfortable, I guess I would say. Like not let your own internal monologue prevent you from moving forward, because we can do that. And like as artists too, who are especially in like films, like we can be in our own world and like we're very humble and we don't want to be we're afraid to like put ourselves truly out there. And so like a big part of it is politics and like being able to communicate and like be around people essentially.
Yeah, and it just takes practice. Like hearing the no's, like it really is just practice of just like, I think it's a win if you like, oh wow, I did that. You know what I mean? I like went up to someone and asked, and even if it's a no, it's just the fact that like, okay, now that you're getting used to this flow of just like asking people, you know, it will eventually lead to yeses if you just keep doing it. And that's the same thing with like applying to stuff, to like meeting new people, to like, you know, getting these mentorships and like going into these rooms. You just have to keep doing it, and it is a time and waiting game, but it's just the fact that you're doing it is the biggest step that will lead you eventually to that yes that you've been waiting for, you know. So
yeah, congratulate yourself a little bit. You did a lot.
Yeah, girl. And also being able to have the work to speak for yourself as well. Like I get hit up a lot for mentorship, but then like I can't see their work on their Instagram, or they don't have a website, they don't have a Vimeo link. I think like having like a landing portfolio is really big when you're reaching out for mentorship, because like, especially like for me, like as a department head, I'm reached out to all the time for mentorship. And it's like, I want to be able to invest time in people who are actually like trying to push ahead. So that will make you stand out. And that's all things you can do while you're in school, is like creating a landing page for your work.
Yeah, that's so great. All right, last question. I know we're way over time. Any last tips for planning out your day, week, some of that time management tools? Someone mentioned Google Calendar, but do you have any more specific blocking or planning tips that have really worked for you? I think this is one thing I'm sure, you know, I struggle with time management. Everyone struggles with time management and just like getting organized in that way. Any tips, last tricks for that or suggestions?
I unfortunately think that time management is so dependent on a like case by case, person by person. Like for me, I am someone that has to like trick myself with rewards, and those rewards are chores. Like I literally like will do 30 minutes of work. I'll do like 30 minutes to an hour of one project, and then I'll be like, okay, 15 minutes, I can go like clean the kitchen, or I can go make lunch, whatever. And like that's how I'll break up my day. I actually love going to coffee shops and working. I think that it's like, it's nice to take, I have an office in my home, and that's where I'll usually work, but I'll give myself kind of as a reward the opportunity to go to a coffee shop, get a beverage, whatever, and then just be there for hours. And I mean, I know people are constantly coming in and sitting down and doing the same thing. So kind of like a co-working space, but not. But yeah, I think that everybody kind of needs to know themselves a little bit and how they manage their time and what they're capable of doing. But for me, I have to trick myself into being productive.
I'm the same way. I really utilize the Pomodoro 30-minute of working, like 10 minutes break to 30 minute. I'm like I've trained myself to do like 30 increments of work. It's like I'm like a guinea pig. I don't know. Yeah, that helps a lot, just you're also like blocking in your time, because sometimes it's like, am I on the computer like way too much right now? Like, do I have to stand up and like stretch and like make myself eat? You know what I mean? So just having that time frame of being like, okay, this is a healthy amount. Now I can go outside and take a walk and then come back like whatever designated amount of work or whatever I need to get done. So yeah, I do the Pomodoro time thing a lot.
Amazing. All right, I'm going to wrap us up, but I want to thank our panelists so much for being here today, for offering all of this great insight and advice. So helpful. Like I said, we might have to do a round 2. But so I just like a million more questions. I'm sure everyone has a million more questions, but thank you all so much. You are all so impressive, doing incredible things out in the world. I'll make sure that everyone gets a recording of this. You'll get our career and professional development freelance resources, which more to come there. We're building up a lot. And you will also get LinkedIn links for all of our panelists. Definitely start building that community, connect with everyone. And students and alumni on the call, if you have any questions about today or freelance at all, feel free to reach out to our office, careers@artcenter.edu. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, thank you to our panelists, and I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your nights.
Yes.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you.